Greetings, folks. Thanks for joining when you join. All right, so I'm doing a short, hopefully a quick live this morning. Part of figuring out who I am. I'm sitting on ball too, if you're wondering why I'm like moving. But I started something and I got so excited about it, and then things taper off, which they do because that's life. So today's video is about Sibyls. And then we're going to elementals and then rocks and rocks formations and some theories I have behind that. We have entered into an era where two major things have happened. One is the education and the information about Sibyls or ancient prophetesses, the Great Mother, and the combination of both being first. Now, why do I mention Sibyls? Because there are people who have talked about these things without any proof, okay? So even if you look at the old histories of Sibyls, the story is that they were the proof. They were the quote-unquote receipts. They would give out information. You know, now today we have like tarot readers from what they were in the beginning, which was basically a prophetess or a Sibyl or whoever, but that's the information that's been handed down to us, right? So, who are foreseers, not necessarily in a psychic religion. This is what's going on with education. This is what's going on with, I don't know if I said politics already, but even with like food and spiritual connection, this is where we get like shamans and gurus and that type of thing, right? There was a seemingly spiritual connection, which we could interpret into a love of people, a love of the planet, a great interest in certain things, right? Because we're looking at how words are today. But these were people, they could talk to trees, they have messages. And so what we're seeing is coming into fruition. We're seeing it more. And the great understanding of the Great Mother. At least, if it's not the Great Mother, it's at least, well, I shouldn't say at least, but it is a recognition of the importance and the balance of the feminine divine and a woman's information, her knowledge, her capabilities, her multitude of intuitive knowledge. Because how did we get the knowledge that we have today, right? And then expressed. And this is actually where we see it in the writings, but even if you don't have the writings, you can understand how somebody would be able to prophetize or to be able to predict an outcome of the future, so to speak, because of awareness, just simple awareness. And then also, if you have watched some of my old videos, for example, I'm getting the information now, but I didn't have the information before about Hebrew and its connection to writings and actually something, maybe a story of how we actually, well, now that information is coming out, but I didn't have that information before. This was something that was kind of like, I say downloaded, gifted, so to speak, from Great Mother because of this time, this specific time that we're in that is breaking the spell, because the ultimate spell was to remove the Great Mother, remove that energy, create cognitive dissonance by convincing folks that creation comes from a male, And I'm not, this is not to dismiss men. It is just, which actually comes from, I've just learned that men actually comes from. So as this time appears, you can also break it down into, say, like a very unhealthy relationship where one or both people are like, whoa. And then when you kind of start looking at yourself, you notice that you have emotional attachments to things. You have emotional reactions to things and may not even completely understand or cognitively understand where that comes from. Well, it's a plethora of things, and it's been going on for many years because we have an automatic disconnection. Creator is male. When everything in nature shows us that that is not possible. It's always a female with eggs or actually even birth. And then, yes, we see genders can change in their own environment with help, so to speak. We also see that in nature. We see it in plants. We see it in certain fish and snakes. And we can see it throughout history with humans in a certain way, because you're literally creating a completely different being, right? But to relate this back, so not but, and. So we see Sibyls rising because Great Mother's energy has always been here, but it's like a resurgence, a remembrance. And in all of that, and this is where I come to the elementals and all of that. So before I talked about the giant trees, because I want to talk about the elementals first. We've been given so many hints. Even if the scriptures are wrong, where did that come from? How did we calculate that? Okay. My theory is that, so we've had hints in our everyday lives as to what an elemental is. So we have people who, every time you touch them or you're near them, they kind of shock you, right? So that would be a fire elemental. We all have the elements within us, and we all have the capability of working with all the elements. We do it all the time. But what has been kind of left out in our education, and even in the esoteric realm, is really honing in on and practicing with our elementals. So we go to some scripture that everyone's well aware of. Mosiah, who, as you've heard me say before, I theorize and have heard is a woman express the powers of elementals. If you read about Queen Khalifa of California, the story is that she was able to move waters across the ocean, like literally on the other side of Turtle Island. Okay. So we've heard stories. So the first story of Mosiah is seeing the burning bush. That's a fire elemental, right? This is where the elements are speaking to the being through the element, because all creation is elemental. Then the parting of the water, earth elemental. And then the continuous knowledge of this being, whether we perceive them correctly gender-wise or not, if the story's been told to us or not, the story still, they show us, I say they, because I theorize regularly to benefit themselves or to control. Be influenced by media and stories and fireworks to floods, right? And these all represent pieces of the elementals, and they also can be manipulated in a way that is unseen, so to speak. And these are things that the Sibyls spoke about and taught. Okay. So I've done a little bit about water elementals, a little bit about fire element. I've done a little bit about each elemental. It would be, and I'm doing some research to bring some proof to that. And then myself purposely practicing with moving water, playing with electricity. Let's see, what's the other one? Well, regularly earthing and connecting to trees and animals and plants. Had a hummingbird come up like real close. When we were on our trip, there's little chipmunks are so cute. Oh my gosh, they're so cute. A little chipmunk, cool. And this is how we also understand that even if we're not completely communicating, we're definitely putting out the energy that they are safe. Or, because we have deer around here. They have figured out that the dog is not going to go through the fence, so they don't run. So you can also see how even if the communication isn't direct or like completely understood, you can feel the responses from nature. Was there another plant? I think I talked about getting to know like plants and things in your area. I think I did. I mentioned how the sap from like the pine trees can heal, and had also received a message about thistle and then saw that same message come through somebody else, right? Things that are pokey and beautiful are protective, right? These are some of the like natural passed down information to, I would say, medicine people. You know, I say Sibyls because that's one of the words that's been handed down, but there's many names: shaman, prophetesses, goddesses, witchy woman, or magical woman, and then we have the herbalists, and we have the chanters and the singers and the dancers. I mean, it's a multitude, but it's definitely the feminine divine, and it actually taking a next step. I don't know if you heard that, but that felt like a little affirmation. Okay, I'm gonna jump off to a little bit. So you saw my videos about the giant trees, the giant tree stumps. And then I talked a little bit about rocks that I had seen in Tucson, and just this feeling that those big, so we went to Signal Hill, and some of those big platforms in the back, they also look like giant tree stumps. So I was like, what the heck? And the information I had got that it's called Signal Hill for a reason, because it used to be, there used to be something there. My theory and what they say is landscapes used to be underwater. Well, what grows in water? Plants. Okay. So, because they just didn't match the rest of the scape. Okay. So, I'm going to share a little bit deeper is through my own experiences and through information. I even have it here, Atlas of the Bible. My theory is that most things came from this part of the world, and I base that off of information that came a long time ago, such as like the pyramids in Peru are far older than the pyramids in Egypt. Everybody knows that. So we all know that. Why aren't we coming back here to look at stuff and figure out stuff? Okay. And personally, because of my education here in the Americas and being taught that I'm African American, went to Africa. And yes, I've been able to communicate with the land. And when I went there, I asked the land, I'm like, hey, I'm home. And she's like, you're not from here. I was like, what? Isn't everybody from here? She says, no. And I just kind of ignored that because I didn't want to believe that completely. And I couldn't quite understand how that was possible with everything I'd been taught. So at some point during that trip, we went to a place called Gunu. I'm probably not pronouncing it. It's been years, but very remote place in South Africa. And the kids are playing, and they're kind of like playing kickball, and the adults are around. And I'm looking. The Americans came to Africa actually and helped populate Africa. This is why so many, like, the look is so similar. And I still was like, I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. But then the next kind of like tell was studying Akhenaten. And this is because he was kind of like a shunned prince, or king, pharaoh. The background story is that his family came from a foreign land. And if you look at the way they depict him, he looks like someone from South America. So, my theory of the Americas hold great, and I'm saying the brown people that have been told that they're not from here, not that the ones that know that they are indigenous, they also hold great information. I'm not saying that they don't. What I am saying is that there is somehow, I think that this also links to the Sibyls, this like thread of information that's inlaid through, I want to say, I used to say genetics, but I'm wondering now if it's more like a soul group that could show up in genetics. But anyhow, that all linked to very similar type of Egyptian, like what we see Egyptian or ancient things, because messed up history. And there's two things I found out doing some research about organs and AKA Black people or Negroes. So in 50 of Negro, mulatto, Chinese, or any Indian blood would not be an American citizen. Then other states followed this and kind of created their own laws behind that. But from what I've seen, that law has not been undone. So as we see laws continue through it's just tweaked a little bit. It's never completely reversed from that. These people would never be full citizens in the Americas. And I saw that because I link to the original peoples of the Americas and the lands itself, because you would have to strip the people of their rights to the minerals and the land to create a TDA account in the first place, which the original TDA, if you don't know about TDA accounts, because I know this got cut off in my last live, but my last live got a lot of stuff cut out of it. Anyhow, your Social Security card, it's actually an account made in people's names when they're born or once they get their Social Security account number. And it is on hold until they are 18 so that they can get out of debt. This was created by Roosevelt back in the day. This is where our federal, banking system comes in. So before that is a whole bunch of taking land type of thing. Then it's creating these accounts. And then those accounts are actually held and banked on by those who are in the bank. But they're based off of your value, so to speak. Well, where would that come from? It has to come from somewhere. So my theory is it comes from removed. People are taxed. You create these accounts. There's these, the 1%, so to speak. And then there's kind of the rest of us that are basically working to get a little bit of money out of our own Social Security accounts, is my theory, because where else does that value come from? Okay, so with that said, in the state of Oregon, they actually made it illegal for people of color, all those things I said before, to own land, to buy land, to live here. They would be whipped twice a year until they left, but supposedly that only happened to one Negro. And where I live, there's a whole bunch of, so very similar to pretty much the rest of the United States. A lot of things here have indigenous, I don't even want to say it. It's called Dead Indian Memorial Road. Okay. Now, on our way back from this trip, we're going through, so before, and I'll post the pictures in my community so that you can get a better look at them. But it looks to me like there's a bunch of mounds. And then, okay, so where we went, so we did kind of this big circle. So we ended up going, we went up this way, and then here's the lake we're at, like on top of my head, the lake we're at, and then we came back down this way. And what was so interesting about coming back down the other way is there's a certain spot on that mountain where you can see Mount Ashland, which is connected to Mount Shasta. You can see Mount Shasta. Across the way is another pyramid-looking mountain, and you would have been able to see those two trees so many millennia ago. Now, when we got to the top of where we were staying, it was actually called Table Mountain Winter Playland. You know my theory about anything called table anything. What are tables made out of? Wood, typically. And so let's see if I can give it some good pictures. So also, when it comes to elementals, I wonder about what was called the mud floods. And there are definitely pictures here that look like things have been melted. And there were, on the way back down, coming back towards home, towards the valley, there were some big rocks in the side of the, and that looked, heard that volcanic mountains will do the same thing, which would make sense because you have big balls of ash and water. They kind of roll. They might get bubbles. I know, but also it just didn't fit. They would, okay. So let's see if we can. Here's one of the pictures, kind of like sloped. Then you can see all the layers, right? It looks almost like. Then in that same area is this kind of rock. Really hard to see here, but I'll put it, like I said, in the community. And this rock is like rounded and bubbly, but also trip out on this. I didn't even realize it until it looks like they're blocking an entrance. See the bottom there? Where's my finger? Okay, it looks like somebody's back. And zooming in on the picture, I was like, oh, that's interesting. This one even looks like an elephant. See that down there? Whoops. See that? Looks like an elephant down there right there. Okay, and then let's see. I want to show you guys a couple more. So I'm coming back down the mountain. That was going up the mountain. This is coming back down the mountain. So this is the valley we're coming into from on top of the mountain. And to me, there's several kind of filled with water. But this is all the area that's called Memorial Indian Road. And, you know, why do we still call it dead? You know, that's, anyways. Okay, I think it's this one. Can I zoom in? Yeah. This one's a little harder to see. But to me, these look like faces in the rocks. Because when I was coming down, it looked like profiles. And then it looked like standing people, but giants. I know how this sounds. But I just found it. I saw a lot of mounds that way, and then I'll show you guys because I had shown you pictures of the pyramid before, like as you know, when I was coming in the road, and I was like, hey, here's that pyramid. You can't see it behind the road right here, but between that mountain and this road is a lake. It's pretty much a man-made lake, but we know where man-made lakes started. There was like a stream or a river or creek or something there first. And then, so there's two of them right next to each other. You can barely see the other one. Let's see if I have another picture of that. Yeah, there it is again. So that's the first one, and the one I just showed you would be the second one. These are the ones that you see as you're like coming into this area. There's all these rock formations. Is that pretty much everything I wanted to show you guys? Is it this one? That also looks like faces. Yeah. This one. We'll start at small. That's small. As you zoom in, kind of look like faces. In one picture that I don't see right now, it looks like there's like a person standing with a shield on their back, like in front of the mountain. But all this area is, you can't really explore on it. It's privately owned. But this whole area, my theory was indigenous peoples. And, now they're not here. And there's not a lot of history as far as like what ingredients, as far as deep history of the indigenous people out in Oregon. I'm still doing some looking. Like, I don't know because California is right there. This technically would have Klamath. So the indigenous mountains here, and these, specifically Crater Lake is probably a giant tree. I'm pretty convinced. They can't find the bottom of it. I think it's because it was a giant tree and it has roots and they go way under the planet. And who knows how much water is in there? Like, oh my goodness. And is that the water that just keeps siphoning through the world? I don't know. But when it comes to Oregon, even the United States in general, and then the land, first, I think what has to happen is an acknowledgement from each town, city, state, all the way to the whole U.S., admitting that they had mistaught us about our true history, mistaught everyone about the true history of the peoples, and then start correcting that history. I know that a lot of grassroots people have been doing that. We've been researching our own genealogy and stories, and even talking to people who are known indigenous people now, who will tell us some of their history, and then you find out from some of their history that the history we've been taught is not true. So I think here we've been given hints as to the true history of this area, but it is tricky to find. And I think it's because of the laws here that I think a lot of things were destroyed. A lot of people were run out of here. So how, where did they go? And they changed the law of, did they change the law of ownership? I don't know. If they did, it was just fairly recently. But as far as like people of color owning land here, because people of color own land here, but I'm not sure. I actually have heard that there are people within the real estate industry who will not sell to brown people because of that law. This is some messed up stuff. So, but I'm getting that to, I'm relating that to the names of the areas here, how close we are to California, how close we are to Mount Shasta, these amazing structures. There are definitely mounds here, definitely evidence of giant trees. So I'm relating that there is something that will show up in this area relating to all the others, all the other peoples, all that kind of ancient history that's been quote unquote hidden. And that just brings me back to the Sibyls, because a lot of that information has been, streamed into consciousnesses of these divine feminines for this time, for the remembrance, and then also for the teachings. All right. Next video will be about the 9-day calendar, because I've done a little bit more research, and as much as I think it still fits, but what are we missing? Because a true 13, maybe that's what I did. Anyways, we'll talk about what I have figured out on the 9-day calendars for the month of August. Because August in general, across the board, well, this hemisphere is a very powerful, energetic month. That's why it's named August, after Augustus Caesar. So many hints. All right. Thanks for joining. Any questions? Any comments? Until next time, take care.